Hi, everyone. I am Bob Killen, Mr. Bobby Tables across all the things. I am a steering member and chair of SIG Contributor Experience. This is my last term on steering. I have one more year for this, and I'll pass it on to you, Nabrun.
Hi, I am Nabarun. I work at VMware, and this is my second year of my first term in the Kubernetes Steering Committee, and I'm also one of the chairs for SIG Contribex.
Hi, I'm Maciej. I'm one of the newly elected community contributor steering members. As you see, I'm a little bit excited and a little bit nervous out of that because I had a small realization this morning that I'll be answering the question that I posting last year. But other than that, I'm also leading SIG CLI, SIG apps, and batch worker groups. Yes, too many things that I'm slowly trying to pass on to over someone else. Eddie, you hear that? They all telling me that I have to pass over the 6 UI. And yeah, that's all.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Elder. I'm known as Ben the Elder on GitHub. I work at Google on Kubernetes. I'm a steering member in my second year of my first term, and I'm a tech lead for SIG testing and SIG K Infra.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, this will be a really short AMA. Oh.
Hi. Thank you so much for being on steering. We keep hearing about how we need to get more contributors into the project. We need to make it sustainable over time, etc. I'm very interested in hearing what the newly elected and the longer-term members of steering think we should do. What should all of us do at this conference and going forward to make that happen?
Does anyone want to kick it off?
I can start. Yeah. So one thing that we just did is rolled out the standard concept of a sub-project lead. I'd really love to see all the SIGs start listing out their sub-project leads and thinking of them as potential future SIG leads. We really, we have a lot of people working in the project, but we don't always recognize everyone evenly for what they're doing, and we need to have a pipeline for the leadership going forward. So one of the things we've been working on this year is trying to expand that. We also rolled out chair and TL split standard across all the SIGs, so you can have people in both roles, but you should be thinking about them as separate roles that you could potentially have more people in. It's really hard to bring people in. I think most of the people in the project are being paid in some form to at least partially work on it. Maybe they're doing something else, maybe not.
Actually, can we get people to raise their hands? How many people are contributing as part of their job or sort of associated with it?
So most of the hands in here. So we can't create those jobs, or maybe some of you are senior enough to make those jobs. I can't create those jobs. But we really need to work with the people we have, and when we get people to join and start working, we need to recognize them and bring them up. So within your SIGs, be thinking about, do you need to be lead of all these things, and can you pass it on to someone else, and how can you create these roles? So within my own SIGs, I rotated out of SIG testing chair, and we brought in a whole new set of chairs over the past year. I don't know if any of them are here actually, but thank you all. If you are here, raise your hand. Okay. Mohammed, I know, is here, which we just rotated into testing or infra lead. Thank you. So that's a start. I don't think it's the whole solution, but
Yeah.
It's not an easy, and if you look around, it's also tough times for us to pull in more folks, especially around various different uncertainties going on around us. But I think the responsibility is on not only the steering members, but literally each and every single one of us we are part of the project, we are the project, and we are also responsible for making sure that the project will last for sufficient number of years, releases, however you want to look at it. We have the opportunity to speak up in our workplaces. I know that it sometimes sounds silly, or sometimes you're kind of repeating yourself over and over and over again. But trust me, the water will continue dropping and it'll be able to make a hole. So in a similar fashion, you will be able to succeed over time and bring additional people. Just make sure that you can. And we are working towards providing you with some resources that will be able to help you with convincing your managers, your directors, VPs, whoever is responsible for making sure that you have the resources to help with the project.
Actually, a quick note on those resources and things like that. One of the things that I know a lot of people hate doing, but is actually quite useful, is the annual reports. We have multiple leads and lots of contributors who have actually been able to use them to basically justify their continued time in the project. So one of the things that we've been thinking about the previous steering and subject for the current steering is, what kind of content we can put in the annual reports, and what we want to make it easy for people, but also like what is beneficial to include in there to you if you're looking at them, to your employers, or even if you were if you aren't potentially employed by someone already, something you could potentially point to as just like on your resume is like, hey, I had helped with these initiatives in here, and just sort of think about like how we can surface more of that information better. The other sort of thing, going back to like the chair TL split and the sub-project leads, we want to have more people in these leadership positions, because part of the responsibility, at least of the chair, is to try and look at the health of the group and help organize things like some of the mentor cohorts that we have done. I know we've had some mixed results with some of them, but we do have a couple that have been quite successful. And when it comes to essentially like growing people into be reviewers, be approvers in specific areas, if you like, SIG Contribx can help you with criteria and helping with getting something like that organized, but having a lead that is very knowledgeable about the space, sort of take point, is incredibly useful there.
Add a quick follow-up to that. SIG testing did this. With Contribex, we had an open call for potential chairs and had a mentoring cohort with Contribex helping us run this, and it was really excellent, and I'm really happy with how it's come out. And our new chairs have been super helpful running everything. I highly recommend considering this process for your SIG.
To add to Bob's point on the mentorship cohorts, I feel like when we start on onboarding new contributors, we should also think about the bandwidth that existing maintainers have. So I feel like the mentorship cohorts serve as a really good way to even increase the maintainer bandwidth. So essentially, we should train people who are already active contributors but are not maintainers to become maintainers and then participate in the process themselves. So we'll basically increase the buzz factor that we have in order to bring in more people into the community.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah. So I've seen like at some point in the past few years, we reached an inflection point where we had like far too many new contributors compared to maintainers. And through the annual reports, we noticed that people are getting burnt out, which has reduced somewhat in the last year, like 2022. We'll also talk about in the steering maintainer track session.
One other thing, like at least on the mentor cohorts, when it comes to potentially trying to, justify time and doing that sort of thing. It's like right now you are, if you're just like the only approver in an area, keeping that area healthy is difficult for you. And a mentor cohort might take time, but if you are trying to, explain it to your, employer, whoever, just like I'm going to spend 4 to 6 months helping get more people in here, so that way, in 6 months, in a year, I can focus on other areas. So yes, you're taking a little bit more time away for this period, but the longer term view is that you will be able to spend a lot more time potentially on the things that are more relevant to your, your job duties.
Maybe one last sentence, literally.
Sorry, Tim.
Building on top of what Bob said, a very good approach also is in a similar fashion as you're growing within the community, gaining new responsibilities. In parallel to that, you're also building your own personal career within the company you're currently at, or in general, your own company, your own personal career. In both cases, you can build people around you, and those people will allow you to grow further. And you can easily justify that by growing new set of people that will take over within your company equally as outside of the company. Nobody from your management, I hope, will deny that, oh, I'm gonna replace myself with those 3 people, and that's why I'm gonna, for the next 6 months, spend this much amount of time on mentoring them. That helps, and that's a direct benefit that you can translate to your company, to your manager. I've done that. It works like a charm, and you're basically doing 2 things at once.
Tim, sorry.
We should take Tim's question, but as you can tell, we're all super passionate about this, and we'd also love to hear from you later if you have suggestions for what else we should be doing.
I'll ask my question, but I want to carve out for that topic. When I was a younger person learning to drive a car, they taught me to look ahead, anticipate, try to predict what stupid thing is going to happen in front of you, right? As the people who are ostensibly driving the car now, I would like you all to look ahead. What do you think are the sort of existential risks that Kubernetes as a project faces? I've asked this question to some of you before, but I would like to be on the stage. What are the existential risks, with the exception, obviously, of maintainership, because we've spent a lot of time on that, and I think everybody can agree with that. What do you see?
One of the things that I see is like companies who fund a majority of our contributors right now, pulling out funding, if they feel like they're not getting value out of it. That's one of the big crises that I see that might come in the future. So we need to somehow be prepared for that. Or I don't have concrete solutions on how do we resolve that, but maybe others can have.
Funding has definitely been a fun topic for the past couple years. Kate Sempro has been working really hard on that. You should come to our 6th session. We're going to be talking about what we've been doing and what we're going to do for the infrastructure funding. But I think it's not just infrastructure funding. We have other things that we support, and the project uses a massive amount of resources across the various dimensions. There's so many people, vendor credits for running things on cloud. We have 3 million from Google and 3 million from Amazon. We have resources from Fastly and Equinix. It's a lot that we depend on, and it's easy to just expect that we're going to have this huge amount of resources in perpetuity and consume all of it, or even more than we have. So that's been a constant struggle. I think we're going to be aiming to draw down a bit and not be consuming near 100% of what we have, so that we're not depending on having all of that. I think there's a number of other existential threats, but yeah, that one's another sustainability topic that's been very close to me, and we've had a lot of great work in the project over the past year from the contributors in Kate's Info, from various companies and independent folks working on that problem, and it has been tough. We went into this year with a $4 million spend projected against the $3 million budget. So it's a real problem.
The other quick thing, like, I think was it 2022 or 2021 that we had like the serious crisis? 2022? Okay. Yeah. So 2022, like we were hitting a point where we're like, okay, do we stop serving images, or do we shut down CI and stop and halt development of the project? That was the kind of crisis situation we were in.
Last year at this conference, like a week or two before, Tim Hawken and I were escalating at Google to get emergency last-minute credits added to the project. We had another $700,000 of GCP credits because the project was like going to run out of funding approximately at KubeCon. And we did a bunch of things to try to avoid that, but then we went into this year and it's picked up even more. We're in much better shape now, but we have to stay on top of these things, and no one else is gonna keep coming to save us with magic huge amounts of extra credits or whatever.
Other kind of funny thing with that too is like that was the same time that the CNCF released the like Kubernetes project report, and everything was going up and everything was good, and gold star on everything. It's just kind of like maybe not.
But that was like 2021 rollups.
Yeah. Did you have thoughts?
I'll pass.
Okay.
I don't think that's the only existential
No.
threat, though.
Yeah, like
did you have others that you wanted to add, or?
I got something else I can add. So something else, it ties into the funding, it ties into like the maintainership a bit, but all the sort of keep the lights on work and trying to pay down all the tech debt, as that just generally is not incentivized by anyone. But it's like, how many people have had to do like /retest numerous times? And how many people get time to actually work on those tests and hopefully, reduce those types of instances? Yeah, everyone's everyone except Jordan.
Dims, Antonio, Jordan, where are you?
Yeah,
stand up.
Yeah,
stand up.
Seriously, these are the powerhouses that solve all these. Like, but yeah, like
Those three fix so much in the CI. Thank you.
yeah. So like for me, like I just see this as progressively getting worse as, we're having to continually justify, where time is spent in the project. We don't have a good way of explaining how the impact of that sort of thing, and these constant sort of little problems that are eating into it.
I'll add to that. I think the balance between how we make sure that through things like production readiness review that incoming features meet the stability expectations of our users for a mature project, while at the same time not sort of like
Creating too much friction?
Yeah, punishing people too hard for trying to actually work on features. I think, most of the companies, if they're going to send people to work on things, it's really hard to say, oh, everyone's just going to be like keeping the lights on and maintaining things. You kind of have to have, but we're, shipping this improvement, and then we're also have some people spending some time on maintaining the thing. I worry about if we get to a place where all anyone's doing is maintaining the thing, and then we're all everywhere really struggling to justify. We don't want at the same time to, have a reputation for being unstable and shipping half-baked features, but I think we might need to reevaluate the KEP process and things and see what can we do to make it less intimidating and let people ship features so they can justify the rest of the work they're doing. I think we scare away people with the, it's going to take me 3 years, and so screw it, I'll just go do something closed source instead. Yeah. And I think that's also hurting our pipeline for new maintainers, because if you look around the room,
The KEP is super intimidating.
we talk about, these people are fixing all the CI for us. I mean, they've been here a while. we're not doing a really great job bringing new people into that, and I think part of it is because it's hard to build a career participating here if you're new to it, because it's so hard to ship new things. And at the same time, it's important for the project to be stable, but finding the balance, and I'm not sure if we have, I don't think we quite have that right now. I also think there are some things that we need to improve and pay attention to our users. There are still some really rough edges with Kubernetes, and it's easy to say, oh, well, Kubernetes is super successful and we have tons of people here and we've won the container wars and it's great. But I think, you know, over time, if you don't keep after those things, then something will sneak up on us and be the next thing. So making sure we can ship the things that will make Kubernetes easier to use for everyone. And what I've been seeing is that it's been really hard to do those things for various reasons. It's just really hard to work on changing things, and a lot of the time is going to just trying to keep things functional.
I think you had a question next?
Yeah, so it's kind of a follow-up question to the first question. As a person who contributes some of the time, not as a, you know, not my job, when I talk to a lot of people at KubeCon, a common theme is that their companies don't give them time to contribute, and so they do their contributions on their own. What can we do to create material or better promote materials that they can use and that we can use to convince our companies that that time is well spent, especially in, this is kind of unfortunate to the second question, instead of just spending money to CNCF, spend time to help contribute or become maintainers. And so that, you know, it's not just on the maintainers to create a space, it's what can the companies do to create that time for people to contribute and become maintainers, besides, you know, the big cloud providers and service providers and all of that kind of stuff.
This is like one area where I hope that the annual reports actually help a bit, because that gives, you know, like a good document or thing like, you know, this is what this area has done, and or like, you know, this is what my contributions have done in, you know, basically my personal time. Like, I can do things like the other thing is like we can in these reports is also escalate not just the achievements, but sort of the risks and things that like are slipping or are a problem, and being able to highlight like, you know, these are things that are useful to us as users, but we can't get time to work on them. Like they're not going to, you know, develop themselves without, you know, commitment of resources. And that might be like if you as a, you know, end user contributing time, you might not have the expertise to develop that feature. But if you can coordinate with like the other people that do, and you can offload some of their work, then that opens it up for, you know, them to work on what's important to you. Like it is hard. There are other ways to go about it. Like we can talk about bug fixes. We can talk about like frequently features and things are prioritized if you have a presence in the project. So if you are there, even if you're not necessarily contributing like the features or whatever is important to your company, but like there's a bit of trust where if like you report a bug and you are a org member, it's a safe bet that we know that you know what you're talking about and can actually spend time to help us potentially triage that bug and things like that. And that is hard to justify to your employer without, you know, concrete examples. But there are things out there that are examples out there that are useful. And I think, you know, trying to surface some of that stuff, or at least talk more about how to represent that sort of information when you're going to your employer, could potentially be beneficial.
I think we also touched on earlier, we really, one of the top items we have right now is we want to take another look at the annual reports and see what we can do there. We've had some success in the past with groups being able to call out, these areas are at risk, we don't have enough people, these things are not going well, we need help here. I think a pretty high profile, not exactly the same example, but over the past year at CD, we had a pretty open cry for help from that project, and I think there's been a lot of work on that. I know I just saw Winja moving around here. Hi, Winja. Thank you to Merrick and
And
Winja.
yeah, who's from ETCD here? Like, yeah.
These folks made a point to put out a public cry for help, a statement about this is the state of the project. It's not good. We need people. We need help. We need time. We need resources. And have gone through the process to bring it into Kubernetes as a SIG and gain some of the project's resources and bring some attention to it. I know as a result, we actually brought on someone to work on etcd on my team. And that's not always going to happen for everything, but making people aware openly that this area needs help, it can work. We need that from
really
y'all.
suck at basically, surfacing areas that need help. Like collectively, we're just terrible at it.
We need to not just hear it from you all here at the summit, but it needs to be public where we can show companies and people in positions to decide these things that they're going to staff them. So annual reports is one, but with etcd, they just put it out on the mailing list and contact the CNCF and things. So, if it's that bad, then let us know, and then we know this is a hotspot that we need to draw attention to. And if we have things that are public that we can point to, we can show leadership at the companies and things that we need to get people behind this.
I was literally talking about anything that's at risk, just toss it on the front page of Kubernetes.io. But something else for people that are in that position of being the sole maintainer of a sub-project or something like that. Something that has worked has been to make it as in your face as possible by mentioning it in top of your README, in your issue templates, in your PR templates. Because even if it doesn't get you help, people resources, is it at least buys you some grace from the people submitting those issues and submitting PRs. Okay, I understand that this is one person doing it in their off time. I'm not going to ask why isn't my issue being, taken a look at. No.
Oh, sorry. One second. Sorry. I want to add one other thing to what you all are saying. After the AMA, we have the contributor call-out section, which is a chance for maintainers of SIGs and groups to come up and make a pitch to other maintainers in here about what you might need some help with.
So Kubernetes has been trying to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and self-driven for a very long time. But we do live within CNCF. We live within the Linux Foundation. So, what are the kind of things that you all are thinking about, in terms of interacting with the other leadership bodies within the larger organizations that we live in, and how we can get help from them? Going forward, right? We've done a bunch of things before, including escalating some of the things that we mentioned before. But are there any other new things that you're thinking about that we should be doing there? In the end of the day, the people in this room are the ones that ended up having this big conference, right? We made this happen, right? So we should be trying to see how we can make sure that we get supported when we need help as well, right?
I know we are actually looking to schedule some time with the TOC to at least have a private meeting between our groups to try and see, talk about what potential opportunities there are to basically work closer on some of this stuff. And in general, the CNCF can boost our requests and our things like that. to a larger audience. We do need to come up with a better way of bubbling up those requests. And one thing that I think we do, again, sort of do a poor job on, is a lot of time when we talk about these requests, we're talking about them as if we are talking to like each other and other very technical people. And the people that make the sorts of decisions that can get headcount, that can allocate resources, don't have this in-depth knowledge. And we need to really work on like tailoring what we write and how we convey this information so it's digestible by the people with that sort of like limited context.
We talked about it during last week's steering meeting, but it appears that a lot of the maintainers is not even aware about the amount of scholarship that the CNCF does provide for attending KubeCons. I know that a lot of folks is struggling to get to KubeCon, to be able to attend Contributor Summit, to be able to talk with one another, because when we are in person, a lot of the things that we can push forward very quickly, or just sit around and discuss this in much faster pace than normally you do with either GitHub, Slack, or Zoom. So if you are struggling with budget for traveling, do reach out either to us, and there are options where we as a steering can help to get you those scholarships, or if you have folks that are working on Cube project, but because they are either juniors or early in their careers, they are not much exposed as you are, that could help them. It also goes down to the growing additional folks in the community. Use those resources. I know that the current limits are pretty high, and we're not even using that much of it. So we should be using those resources because they are available. It is just that we, like Bob mentioned, we do a very poor job with promoting those. We discussed it, and we will be trying to inform everyone. We will be trying to push to all the SIG leads that knowledge, so that they can even push forward to additional peepers and all the members of the community. Because when we're together, a lot of this stuff is easier. A lot of the stuff we can literally, over the week that KubeCon is happening, a lot of the decision can be really expedited. So there are. Yes, that needs space, and the KubeCon is the perfect space. So, yeah.
So one of the related things that we wanted to bring up with higher bodies is, what is the definition of maintainers for Kubernetes, and who is going to get support through the scholarship route? So right now, the way the scholarship is handled, it's pretty limited right now, because our definition of maintainers is different from the foundation's definition of maintainers. So we discussed in the last meeting on how we can proceed forward and how we can help support a lot of our contributors who are, let's say, speaking in Kubernetes Contributor Summit. Technically, they are not considered as like KubeCon speakers, and they don't get funding through that funnel. So can we build some ways for the SIG leads or the sub-project leads to bubble this up to steering, and then we can vouch for those people to the foundation that they should be funded to come to the summit, attend KubeCon, and speak, give out their sessions. So those ways we are trying to interact with the higher bodies and get more resources into the system.
One more note on that is, like, if you find yourself in this position of not being able to attend KubeCon, or you think you're not going to be able to attend KubeCon, please look at the deadlines around the scholarships, because it's a lot easier for us to, if you apply and then bring it up to us before the maintainer scholarship closes, than it is after. Significantly easier. So like, if you are leads, or if you know people that might be in that, or you'll be in that situation, please bring it up early.
Dims, I think it's a tough question and one that we need more time for. It's something I'll be thinking about. There's been so many obvious fires to tackle. I think the main thing that we've been working on here kind of dovetails from this, which is reevaluating who's officially listed as a maintainer with the CNCF. For a little bit more context of what they were talking about earlier, the CNCF actually has in a repo a file that has, these are the maintainers for all these projects. And for Kubernetes, it's basically just steering right now. And we really want, and contribx leads. So we want to have more people be recognized as maintainers of the project from the CNCF's point of view when it comes to things like formal requests, and not just for travel funding for other things. But for now, if people have thoughts about things that we should get funded, if you go to the Kubernetes steering repo, Kubernetes/steering, there's a issue template type for funding requests, and Kubernetes/funding.
I honestly think we should just consolidate that.
We really should consolidate that to steering issue. We have so Kubernetes/funding, my bad. You can file an issue there, and there's a template, and you can outline to us what you think should be funded. We funded various smaller things by getting resources from the CNCF. Right now what happens is you file an issue, steering looks at it, say, that sounds reasonable. We file a support ticket with the CNCF, and they follow up to get the funding squared away. Off the top of my head, the most recent one was the last week in Kubernetes development that some of our members, like Josh, are running. We're running up against limits, mailing out that mailing list, and we got a paid subscription for that, and the CNCF just handles that for us. So mostly smaller things, but so if you all know things that you think we should get funded, there is a path to request that right now, but we also want to open it up so that it's like other people in the community can go direct to the CNCF. But I do think to your point that like we should be thinking more steering of what we can request, but well, besides the things we've talked about here, a lot of things come up for steering besides, whatever things we're mainly doing for our jobs. So there's only so much bandwidth, and I don't think we've had a lot of time on this one yet, other than how can we enable more people to go do that directly.
Yeah, I think we have time for just one more question, and before that I want to conclude this thread, that this also calls for, please do utilize sub-project leads to recognize more people, and in that way we can get more people to attend KubeCon if they are not being funded by their employers. So, one more question we have?
I think we have 2 people with microphones, so I challenge the steering committee to 2 questions, only one person answering each, or 2 per question. So we'll go ahead in the back, and then we'll do this one next.
Hello. I have a question around maintainership. That's always fun. So this is actually, I think, my first year of dealing with this problem, so some advice would be helpful. How do you deal with hostile or disgruntled contributors and users? What are some tools and things that we can use as maintainers to help with that?
Number 1, Code of Conduct Committee. Number 2, Slack moderation. Number 3, GitHub moderation. Please, if you see someone behaving rudely or outside the, like they're not following the Code of Conduct, just report on GitHub, just report on Slack. We have automation to flag it to the moderators, and they will come in and act on that. And we have a pretty strong Slack moderation, at least, where people are given warnings or people are straight away banned depending on the severity of the violation.
The context menu on Slack, the 3 dots, if you go there, we have our own integration where you can report a message, use that. If it's on GitHub, report it. And in the community Slack, there's a Slack-admins channel and a GitHub-management, and there's a code of conduct channel as well. All of those resources can do that, and also folks that are active in that channel will know how to direct you to the other groups. Or you can message any of us as well. It sounds like something we might want to follow up with later. It's a hard problem, but definitely if you think they're at all being, it sounds like a code of conduct violation, and that's probably the route we should go.
Yeah, this is my first time with dealing with that problem, so it was like borderline, like just being rude, and yeah, I don't know if it may be necessarily as a COC violation. So that's the thing, is I'm trying to discern where's the line.
Conduct can determine that, and they can take actions like just reminding people to be good to each other.
We do that a lot.
Mo?
So recently I was thinking about community preservation, and I'm sure there's like many aspects to that, but one thing that just came to my mind was a lot of our discussions are recorded in Git repos and GitHub and are relatively easy to find, but Slack is not so great for that. Like every time someone links something in Slack and GitHub, I feel a little sad because I'm like, no search engine can follow that link and record it. And is there something we can do to make those more open and available? Like, it doesn't have to be like a mechanism where you can talk on Slack without being on Slack, but just being able to like look up like, oh, this was said in this channel, and it actually like is a preserved link instead of like some black hole that.
I know that there are tools to archive Slack to public web pages, but I'm not sure if we have ever discussed about this in the Slack moderation.
So, yeah, we did have it at one point where all the logs were public, but Kubernetes is also very, 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 very large now. There's almost 200,000 people in the Kubernetes Slack and like 500 channels. And at least the last time I looked at the tools, they were not selective. There was all or nothing. Would have to revisit that and look at that if we wanted to like surface that information more publicly. We do export all the logs occasionally as admins to make them available. But to like more directly address your question of the linking to Slack threads and things like that, I have encouraged people to basically just copy and paste the conversations out and put them in the issue. Or like in Contribex, we actually like during the pandemic we held meetings in Slack and would then basically aggregate the logs of those conversations and send them out to the mailing list to try and make them more discoverable. So I think the big thing, at least in the interim, is just to try and encourage basically copying the conversation and putting it in a more discoverable place.
Yeah, I'm guilty of linking these sometimes, but I try to make sure it's just a reference to like, oh, this person brought this up here for like credit or that sort of thing. I would encourage people to make sure that anything substantive is winding up somewhere else and isn't in Slack, and don't depend on linking to Slack, and instead of, or maybe in addition to trying to make the Slack open, Slack is also just not a good medium, and even a public Slack log is not a great discoverable way to follow things. If you're doing anything important, do it on a mailing list, do it in GitHub, do a CAP, make sure that these important discussions and decisions are captured openly, and it's okay to discuss things in Slack, but move it out once it's something that you want people to be able to follow up on, instead of just a casual reference to, oh, we were discussing this problem and we need to solve it. I usually see people do that for like test issues or something, but if you're talking about like a feature or something, move that to somewhere with public notes.
Well, I think that's it.
It's
but,
not.
like,
Surprise!
not?
You have until 10:15. We have more question time.
Oh. I thought it ended at 10.
No, it was a trick to make you answer questions faster. So if anyone else has things they'd like to ask.
Well, does anyone else have questions? Christoph, our former steering member and current governing board rep.
No, I'm the plant with like the easy question. So we've talked about like some of the risks that steering might see to the project. I'm going to ask the flip side question. Where do you see opportunities for a project? Where are the kind of like glimmering, shining parts of the project that are actually expanding, doing good things?
I have an idea, but like, I don't want to be the one to like.
Let's go first, and I think we see so. I have an example. Yeah.
I'll speak from my field. The batch work group, the amount of work that the batch work group over the past year and a half, if I remember correctly, we were set up basically before the European KubeCon last year, and over the past 18 months, give or take. Yes, yes. A lot of the stuff that happened that was born out of the batch work group, I think a lot of the credit goes to Aldo, Abdullah, Mihao. They've been pushing a lot of the topics that we identified very early on when I was writing the first jobs. There was already a to-do like, oh, we should track the statuses differently, but we never did it because we lacked the time. And the push towards all sorts of AI, ML engines allowed us to actually have the space and the ability to push forward the features around the batch. And even though we're like a ton work has been done, there's still even more that will happen in the upcoming months. The chairs have rotated, almost all. I think myself and Swati are the only original members who will be making it official probably this week or next week, but the time for decision was basically until last week or so. So yeah, that's one of the places that I personally see a lot of the growth happening in the upcoming months.
One more area that I see good hope in is LTS. So a lot of work is going in to make LTS happen. I know that survey I think was completed and that is going to go out to people. So that's a great progress I see, and I really hope and I have good ideas that people would come up with answers to how do we do upgrades, how do we maintain dependencies. Yeah, upgrade and downgrade as well, maybe in-place upgrades, maybe things like how do we maintain like older versions of Kubernetes, or do we even do it? How do we do it? So those kind of things.
Wanted to make sure that other folks are getting a bit of the slices we talked about earlier, but I'm actually really excited about this one. Thank you, Christoph. We almost never get positive questions. It's all, oh no, the doom. No, there's a lot of really great things happening. I think we have awesome opportunities and new workloads that have a ton of energy behind them. You know, whatever you feel about the AI ML space, there's a ton of resources behind that. People want to run those workloads, and we have opportunities to improve Kubernetes in the ways that are demanded by those workloads. I think we've had a number of other spaces that are going really well. I'm excited about how well we've been able to bring on new folks into leadership in some of the SIGs I'm participating in. I was talking earlier about how we still have some rough edges. I'm really excited about all the work that's been going on with Cell. I think maybe Cece and Joe are here amongst others participating in that. It's a really awesome tool that we're shipping built in the project to let people avoid shooting themselves in the foot running a webhook for a trivial validation and have a much more predictable, safe way to do those things and give users better tools. I think we have a number of places where we're actually putting in that polish work, and the project is getting easier to use, even though there are other places where I think maybe we're not making progress yet.
So I have two things, but I'll first also plus one batch. For those of you that have known me for years, this has been like my little passion project since I joined the project years ago. In fact, like me and Jiffy, Jeff, were like 2014, like we were looking to do jobs and things like that on Kubernetes, and opened an issue, which led to him pursuing was it the job controller? Yeah, creating the job controller. But like even now today, there's a Chinese group that has a cluster with 20,000 nodes, and they are doing high throughput jobs, and these jobs are like lasting only a minute or two, and we're talking like hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's just like freaking crazy, and I am absolutely all for that. The other thing is in like some of our mentor cohort type stuff. The customized mentor cohort, like that's been actually is anyone here involved with that? No, yeah, I know Natasha's not, but like okay, but like Natasha's been doing a great job at growing people to be like she was given time by her employer and been able to actually bring more people up in that area, like in actually doing like a really good job of bringing on new reviewers and new approvers in that space, and that's just like yeah. So she's added owners already, like freaking really awesome job. I wish she was here.